Hi everyone, welcome back to Winging It. I'm Rebecca from Feather Stitch House. We're in week 20 and it's our nature-based prompt this week, and if you've been watching over on Instagram you'll know that our prompt today is flowers. Now I thought we could get quite playful with this prompt and use the stitches that we've learnt so far to invent some flowers of our own. So we're going to be exploring how to arrange our stitches to create floral shapes. The world is your oyster with this one. Use your favourite stitches in your favourite ways and let's see what we all create. So grab all your bits and pieces and let's get stitching. I'm going to be working on this lovely rich green felt. I've got some fabrics in the rest of my rainbow colours. So I've got my green here and I've got all the other rainbow colours over here, and I've fished out some pearl cottons because I think they're going to lend themselves to what we're going to do today. And I've also got a little scrap of bondaweb and I've already sketched out some simple flower shapes. So I'm going to start by just roughly cutting these out. Remember we roughly cut around our shapes on the paper so that we can cut it precisely when it's on the fabric, and that means we've got glue right to the very edge of our fabric. And I'm just going to bring in my ironing pad and let's start with red. There's a rough side with bondaweb and a smooth side, the paper side, and you draw on the paper side, and then we're working on the back of our fabric and I'm going to put the rough side down. So the rough side is the glue and we're going glue down on the fabric. And I've got my bit of greaseproof paper. Don't like using it very much because it's very crackly, and I'm just going to hold my iron in place. I don't want to keep moving my iron around because then it is likely to move my bondaweb. And I'm just going to repeat that process. I've got some different patterns of fabric, so I'm trying to vary it a little bit. And some yellow. Remember, always working on the back. And now I'm using paper scissors for this because although I'm cutting fabric, I'm cutting paper as well, and I don't want to blunt my embroidery scissors. So I'm just going to cut around those shapes. And what we're creating here is a bit of a background for our embroidery. So we are going to use some of our stitches of the month. And I'm just going to position them for now. You don't have to use applique, you could do this one entirely in embroidery if you wanted to, but I thought it'd be nice. We haven't used any fabrics or patterns, we've mostly used blocks of colour so far this month, so I thought it'd be nice to mix it up a bit. I might get some beads in on this one as well because again everything's been quite flat colours so far. I always used to call these sorts of flowers Mr. Man flowers because they look like the flowers that you always see in Mr. Man stories. It's a sort of 5-petal daisy shape, and I'm not being especially fussy in the way that I cut them out. I don't mind them looking a little bit haphazard. It's all part of the charm. I love that red against the green and the purple. I think they all look quite fun against the green, but the red is that contrasting colour. Okay, so I've got those in position and I'm just going to bring my iron back and hold it down. I haven't brought my ironing pad again because I've got felt in between my iron and my table, so I'm not going to melt my table. So again, don't move your iron, don't sort of iron as if you were ironing clothes because you'll move your shapes. They're nicely attached now. I've got rid of my border, so I'm just going to pop that back in. We're going to add some overstitching. I'm not going to stitch these flowers down specifically, but what's going to happen is as I overstitch, they're going to obviously be held down by the stitching that I add. So let's start with some red. We can go in rainbow order. I'm just going to mark in a circle so that I keep it even. Roughly mark the centre. So if you're not sure about Wheat Ear Stitch, it's one of our stitches of the month. I'll put a link in the top corner so that you can go and learn it if you want to. But if you remember, it's the fly stitch chain stitch combination. So I'm making some petals, unusual petals. These are fantasy flowers. I'm not going for anything particularly naturalistic. We're just going to have fun with our stitches and make some flowers and leaves. So I'm making all these chains meet at the centre. Okay, so we've got, it's almost rose-like, that one. So I'm going to add another couple in red. I thought it might be nice to do a fairly simple lazy daisy as well, so using our chain stitches from back in March, I think it was. I'm trying to space out my colours to make sure there's an even balance across my panel. And let's play, and I'll show you how to do a Bullion Rose. So you start off with a very small bullion knot. So I'm only going to wrap that maybe 5 times. So you start like that. And then I'm going to come up halfway along that bullion knot, like that, and I'm going to go down on the other side of that first knot, just a little bit further up, and this time I'm going to just a few more wraps. I started with 5, I'm maybe going to put 8 on this time. And as I pull it through, I'm going to make that knot just curl around the first one, like that. And then I'm going to go along a little way down the right hand side of my first knot and make another bullion knot in the same way, but just going around the other end of my starting knot. You have to count with this really to make sure that your petals are going to interlock properly. Okay, so now I'm going to come out. So that was my starting knot, that was my second, and that was my third. I'm going to come up halfway along my second knot, and I'm going to go back in just at the bottom of my third knot. And what I'm trying to do is close up gaps around that centre knot, but I don't want them to look too regular, so we don't work our way around in a circle. So I've wrapped that 10 times. So that one's going to sit around like that. And then I'm going to mirror it on the other side, so halfway up my third knot. So hopefully you can see there that it's starting to sort of interlock a little bit, and we've covered the space around that initial knot, this one here. So what I'm going to do now is make petals that go from halfway around one petal to halfway around the next one. So I've wrapped that one 12 times. So as we go out from the centre, we need to add more wraps because our petals are going to get larger. So now I'm going to come up halfway along that knot that I've just added. I'm really pushing it. Should have started a new thread. I might just get away with it. The trick is to try and keep it round, so as it goes off circular, you can add in a petal to even it back up. So I'm going to add one around here, and as you pull through, you're just going to guide your knot into the right place. So now I'm going to wrap all the way around here. So I'm going to need a good few wraps on this one, maybe 15. So I need another petal over here to help it come back to being circular. And then I'm going to wrap one around the bottom. So that's my little Bullion Rose, and you can keep adding petals. I'm going to leave it there, but the more bullion knots you add, obviously the bigger the rose. I think we'll get some orange on the go now. Let's do a Tête de Boeuf stitch flower. So we're going to start off a little bit like a lazy daisy, but we're going to start our stitches on the outside of the flower rather than the inside, and then we add 2 little straight stitches. So it's a little bit like wheat ear stitch, but it's straight stitches, so this will almost look like pollen flying out of the flower. And I'm going to work them opposite each other, should have drawn a circle really to keep it even, but I'm going to work them opposite each other so that I get my spacing right. Okay, so that's our little Tête de Boeuf stitch flower, and I think let's just do some simple wheat ear stitches. I think they look quite floral. They almost look like seed heads. I'm just going to put in quite a large wheat ear stitch like that, and then I'm going to put a chain stitch inside so that we've got a little bit more solid colour. And we could have a spray of those, so let's put another one in. I'm just going to make a spray of pistol stitches. I'm just trying to show you different ways that you can make flower-like arrangements of stitches, and you can play around with this to your heart's content really. Use whatever stitches you like, whatever stitches work for you, and make the sort of flowers that you want to make. So we're sort of showcasing the stitches that we've learnt so far and arranging them in all sorts of different ways to create this floral effect. Going to make another lazy daisy over here, because simple sometimes is exactly the right thing. I've just realised that my pistol stitch flower is going in a different direction to my wheat ear stitch flower over there, so I might go round and add more pistol stitches just to make it a rounder flower. In fact, why don't I do that now? I do normally mark which is the top. It's almost like a dandelion head. Okay, so I've filled in that one a little bit so that it's rounder rather than just a spray. And I'm quite liking the fact that there's a little bit of texture and dimension to this piece already, so some of them are a bit more raised than others. So you get the idea. I'm not going to make you watch me sit and stitch all the flowers, but I'm going to add in some more. My next stage, I thought it would be good to put in some stems and leaves, because that will help make this look like a garden in bloom. I've just got my green thread, and this will be quite subtle because obviously I'm working green on green, but there'll be enough contrast to make it stand out. So I'm going to be using mostly chain stitch, but what I'm going to do is elongate that anchor stitch that we put in at the end, and then I'm going to go back down the centre with a straight stitch, and it will just give it more of a look of a leaf. So I'm going to put lots of these all around so that we've got some foliage in there as well. I might do some feather stitch leaves and stems as well, so we're just putting lots and lots of leafiness in there just to make it come to life a little bit. You can see what's happening there. What I mean by some feather stitch, let's do it on these clustered flowers. I've made some that look almost a bit like grape hyacinths there. So if I start by making my first stitch sort of cup the bottom of the flower, I can then work my feather stitch down and make it look like almost a vine, I suppose, or something that's trailing. And I don't mind that I'm going over other flowers, I just want it to look full of life. Just show you one more way. So another way is, if I look at this one here, I could do quite an elongated fly stitch. So again, I'm cupping the bottom of the flower with the V of my fly stitch, and then I'm just elongating that anchor stitch so that it's a bit more of a stem. And I can go back, a bit like tulip stitch, I can go back and add another V just to add a little bit of definition there. So I'm going to add in some more leaves and stems, and then we'll come back and talk about the beads. So I've put in some leaves and stems and bits and pieces like that. So the last thing I wanted to do was add in some beads just to bring it to life a bit more, and I wanted to bring these fabric flowers that we started off with a little bit more forward. So what I thought I'd do is, I've got some of these chunky wooden, they're supposed to be wooden seed beads, but they're really massive, and I thought I could put some of these. Might be a bit too big actually. No, we'll get away with it. I've just got some machine cotton here, and I've got a fairly fine milliner's needle just so that I can do all the beads without having to re-thread. So I'm just adding in some centres to some of the flowers and bringing them to life a little bit more. I'm just putting a couple of stitches in these so that they don't move too much. And I've also got, I don't have many really brightly coloured beads, so I've been digging around looking for beads that I can use. So I've got some of these tiny orange seed beads, and I could just use one, but I think I want to make a little bit of a cluster of them. It covers up any unevenness at the centre of the flowers, but it also just adds another texture and bit of interest to the piece as well. Risking catastrophe here with all my bead pots open at the same time. So there's our finished piece, floral display using bright colours and some beads and a little bit of applique in the background and some of our stitches of the month. So we've made a bit of a showcase of our stitches so far, and I hope you enjoyed that. Don't know what to think about those big chunky beads, but we are winging it, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. I can't wait to see your floral pieces and your interpretation of the prompt. Do share your work at #FSHwingingit, and so that we can see all of the pieces for this week together. If you also add #FSHwingingit20. So have a great week. Hope you enjoy making your floral panel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.